Guys, when it comes to picking a national champion for college basketball, it is the most important thing to winning a bracket. You, of course, get the most points. You're also going to get points from that team making the Sweet 16, the Elite Eight, the Final Four, and being the national champion. But when it comes to a champion, going into your bracket, going into filling it out, you really already should know who you want to be the national champion. Of course, we'll see the bracket tomorrow and how it lines up for certain teams, who their opponents are going to be, what their path is, a 1 seed, what's their 2 seed in the same region. But when it comes to actually picking a national champion, the teams that I'm zeroing in on right now, I will go through the list and I will tell you my reasoning. Now, first things first, Ken Palm, the basketball metrics analytics, everyone knows the website. It's best to have a team that's both top 20 in offense and defense, a team that at least made their semifinal game of their conference tournament, meaning they have at least a little bit of momentum. They're guard heavy, they're veteran heavy, meaning they have a lot of upperclassmen. All of those things I take into account when it comes to a national champion. I will say last year we did have a few outliers, especially San Diego State making the national championship, but this really isn't a video about Final Four predictions, although maybe I'll go over that as well. How do you balance it perfectly? I think the best thing to do is to have 2 1 seeds, maybe a 2 or a 3 seed, and then maybe a lower seed. Honestly, the best strategy, the most boring one, might be to have 3 1 seeds. I'm not going to be doing that because you want to have a little bit of fun with it. But when it comes to the teams that I think can actually win the national championship based on analytics, it's going to be Houston. And it seems like right now, I mean, obviously Houston is the #1 team in the nation. They're the most obvious. But if you look at the context of their run this year and the past 4 or 5 years, they have the coaching stability, they have the guard play, they have the senior leadership, and it also feels like it's their time. They've been a top seed in the tournament multiple years before. We remember the narrative with Gonzaga, constantly being a 1, a 2 seed, constantly going deep and losing, and then finally breaking through. Could it be Houston's year? It's seeming more and more likely. The only thing I really have against Houston is a little bit slower of a tempo, a few closer games, the game against Oklahoma late in the year, but they're crushing everyone with their defense. And of course, their defense, I'm sure, is going to be really good in March Madness. The next team I think can win it all, it is UConn. Elite guard play, upperclassmen. The only real knock I have against UConn, and this may be a positive or a negative for other people, they won it all last year. And it just seems so unlikely that the same team will win it again in back-to-back years. It could happen. We saw it with Florida back about 15, 16 years ago, so it's not completely impossible. But when it comes to March Madness, it just seems so unlikely that the same team, unless they're overly dominant, could win it in back-to-back years. Purdue, I'm going to pass up on them. I will not be having Purdue win the national championship. That's not to say I will not have Purdue at least making the Sweet 16. I think they have a nice rebound, go to the Sweet 16 or the Elite Eight. They're injured right now. Maybe if they get a really easy region, I might pick them to the Final Four, but in terms of winning the national championship, I'm pretty sure I'm going to steer clear of Purdue. Auburn is a very interesting case. Now, Auburn has amazing analytics. They have a top 10 offense and defense. I think it would behoove people to pick Auburn to possibly go to the Elite Eight. They're probably going to be a 4 seed, maybe a 3 seed at 25-7. Analytically, they're loved. Technically, if you want to talk about just the analytics, yes, they are a team that could win the national championship. I highly doubt I will pick them to win the national championship, but they are loved analytically. Arizona is another team I am considering, even after their loss to Oregon. I know people are going to go crazy. They lost to Oregon. It was bad. Nobody's going to pick them. Guys, let's not overreact to it. Oregon's a decent team. It was not the tournament. We know how crazy March Madness is. It would not surprise me at all if Arizona went on a run with Caleb Love and made it to the Final Four at least. There's also the narrative that maybe Purdue and Arizona, just like we saw back in 2018 with Virginia, losing to the 16 seed, coming back and winning it all. I picked Virginia to win the national title after losing to a 16 seed because I said they were due. Does the same thing happen to Purdue? And you also do have Arizona last year losing to a 15 seed. Are these teams due for a deeper tournament run? Is that something you could potentially see play out as a narrative? I have thought of picking Arizona possibly to the Final Four. It depends on who the 1 seed is with Arizona. It might be North Carolina, because North Carolina possibly could be the 4th 1 seed. And if it is North Carolina, I might have Arizona going to the Final Four if their 1 seed is North Carolina. Now, if their 1 seed is Houston or UConn, it's going to be very tough for Arizona to make it to the Final Four. You do also have Tennessee. Now, Tennessee, they're the team that kind of got disqualified from the national title, at least when you look at history, by not even making the SEC semifinal game in that conference tournament. Tennessee got crushed by Mississippi State, a team I am not high on. Now, let's not completely overreact and throw Tennessee and say, oh, they're going to lose to a 15 seed, because they're very likely going to be a 2 seed. I still think Tennessee, with a very solid elite defense, can go at least decently far in the tournament, but I don't think they have enough offensive firepower to win the national title. Will I have them in my Final Four? Probably not. You do also have North Carolina there. North Carolina is really coming on late into the year. They're a team I'm watching. I'm not going to have them winning the national title. Duke is another team. I just can't do it. I haven't seen enough from Duke. If they somehow win it all, congratulations to them. They certainly are a team that's kind of being disregarded. I'll agree with you there, and they do have a good offense. But maybe like an Elite Eight team, I could see if they get the right draw. Probably not a Final Four, definitely not a national champion. Iowa State, way too top-heavy on defense. The 67th best offense, that disqualifies you from winning a national title. It would just be so shocking if a team that low in terms of offensive efficiency won the title. And then Illinois, the exact opposite. Illinois does have high potential to possibly make a Final Four run. They are not winning a national title. A team that I could see losing earlier, a few different teams, Marquette, Creighton, Iowa State, those are the type of teams I would possibly look at losing early. Alabama is full offense, no defense. They are, 113th in terms of their defensive efficiency. Very similar to Kentucky. The SEC has a lot of bad defensive teams. But guys, when it comes to picking your national champion, my advice would be you look at Houston, you look at UConn, you look at Arizona. You possibly look at a team like Tennessee. Well, probably not Tennessee. Maybe North Carolina. Those would be the main teams I'm focusing on, with a heavy, heavy emphasis on Houston and UConn. Those would be the 2 teams. Sure, Auburn is really good analytically, but if you look at their performances against other really good teams, they tend to struggle. I think they're a solid team with a very high floor to where they're almost guaranteed to make the Sweet 16 as long as they don't get a terrible draw, but I don't see them winning a national title. I would look at Houston, I would look at UConn, I would look at Arizona, and I would maybe look at North Carolina, teams like that. Tennessee, it's iffy. 21st in adjusted defensive efficiency. I guess Purdue technically could win it all. You know, it's not like their analytics are bad, but they're mainly centered around Zach Edey, the big man. That's normally frowned upon when it comes to tournament play. Again, I think I will have Purdue at least probably making the Elite Eight unless they get a really bad draw. Don't outsmart yourself. Pick the favorites, let's be honest. Of course, my bracket's going to involve some upsets. I want to jazz it up a little bit. And it's also an entertainment value thing as well to try and get some upsets right. But when it comes to brackets in general, correctly predicting a 15 over a 2 is honestly kind of meaningless unless you were going to have that 2 seed go to the Final Four. It's way more important to have all of your Final Four teams right and get your national championship winner than it is to predict some random 14 over a 3. It's fun to do. The key to getting a great bracket is actually The key to getting a great bracket is knowing who the fraudulent high seeds are. And when it comes to teams like 1 seeds that I don't think are going to make the Final Four, I would say North Carolina and Purdue would be the 2 1 seeds I would not have make the Final Four right now. Now, we'll see what happens with the bracket, but those are 2 teams I would steer away from. When it comes to high seeds that could get upset really early, I would not have Iowa State going very far. I would not have Creighton going very far either. Those 2 teams I'm a little bit down on at this point. But that's just some of my advice when it comes to picking a bracket this year, mainly centered around, I'll just be honest, it seems like it's Houston's year. And maybe it's not, who knows? I mean, it's March Madness, it's random, but, you know, it kind of feels like Gonzaga from a few years ago where they're close. Every year they're elite, and they finally get it done. Houston has basically everything you want. They're just a little bit slower in terms of tempo. but they would probably be the team that I would pick. And I'm not breaking any news here. They are the number one overall team in college basketball, but I'm just saying, based off of recent history, it seems like they would be the most likely team to win the tournament. But analytically, teams that I would stay away from: Iowa State, 67th on offense. They're not going to win the title. It's just, history would suggest it's not possible. Illinois, very likely not possible. Alabama, not possible. Kentucky, not possible. Those type of teams who are really, San Diego State in terms of their offense, not possible. I mean, these teams could make the Final Four, but I'm just talking about in winning the title, it's not going to happen for teams like that. Either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.